Zimbabwe, 2008. The government needed money, so it printed it, then printed more, then printed more again. A loaf of bread cost 1 trillion Zimbabwe dollars. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. The actual price of bread. People carried bricks of cash to buy basic groceries. Salaries were useless by the time workers reached home. Restaurant menus changed faster than the food was cooked. At one point, the government issued a $100 trillion note. It still could not buy very much. Most people hear that story and think the lesson is simple. Printing money causes inflation. That is true, but it is also incomplete. Because governments print money all the time. The United States does it. Europe does it. Japan has done it for decades. Most countries do. So the real question is not why Zimbabwe printed money. The real question is why Zimbabwe crossed the line where money stopped being money at all. To understand that, you have to start before the trillion-dollar bread. You have to start with a government running out of options. In the early 2000s, Zimbabwe's economy was already breaking. Agricultural production collapsed after violent land seizures disrupted commercial farming. Exports fell, foreign investors left, tax revenue shrank, businesses closed, unemployment exploded. But the government still had the same problem every government has. It still had bills. Civil servants had to be paid. Soldiers had to be paid. Imports still had to be bought. Debt still existed. Power stations did not care about political speeches. Fuel suppliers did not accept patriotism as payment. Money was going out. Less and less was coming in. That is where the trap begins. Because governments hate visible cuts. Telling people there is no money is politically dangerous. Printing money feels cleaner, quieter, easier. At first, it even looks like it works. Workers get paid. Shops stay open. The government survives another month. Nothing collapses immediately. In fact, for a short time, it can feel like the crisis is under control. That is the dangerous part. Because printing money feels like a solution right before it becomes the problem. Imagine there are 10 loaves of bread in a town and $100 chasing them. Then suddenly there are $1,000, but still only 10 loaves. The bread did not become more valuable. The money became less valuable. That is inflation in its simplest form. More currency, same goods, higher prices. At first, people complain. Then, they adapt. Then, they panic. Because once prices start moving fast enough, behavior changes. You stop saving. Saving becomes stupidity. Why keep money if it will be worth less tomorrow? You spend immediately. Businesses know this, so they raise prices faster. Workers demand higher wages because yesterday's salary already feels old. The government responds by printing more to cover those wages. Now the machine is feeding itself. This is where inflation stops being arithmetic and becomes psychology. Trust begins to die. Trust is what money actually is. Paper money has no magic. It only works because people believe someone else will accept it tomorrow. The moment that belief weakens, the system changes. People stop asking, "How much does this cost?" They start asking, "How fast can I get rid of this money before it loses more value?" That is hyperinflation. Not just rising prices, a collapse in time itself. Money stops storing value between today and tomorrow. In Zimbabwe, prices doubled so fast that businesses could not keep up. Some stores stopped labeling products entirely. Some workers were paid several times a day so they could run out and spend it before prices changed again. People became billionaires on paper and poorer in reality. The numbers became absurd because the trust was already gone. Eventually, the Zimbabwe dollar became so useless that people abandoned it. They turned to US dollars, South African rand, anything that held value better than the local currency. That is the final humiliation of hyperinflation, when your own people refuse your own money. Because at that point, sovereignty becomes theoretical. Your economy starts running on someone else's currency. That means someone else controls the foundation. Zimbabwe is remembered for trillion-dollar bread because it looks ridiculous. But the real lesson is not the number. It is the sequence. Economic decline, revenue collapse, government spending that cannot stop, printing as a temporary fix, inflation, panic, loss of trust, currency death. That pattern is not unique to Zimbabwe. It is the same mechanism, just at different speeds. Some countries hit the wall violently. Others stretch it across decades. But the rule is the same. A currency survives on trust longer than it survives on math. Once trust breaks, the numbers stop mattering. When money stops storing value, power moves somewhere else, usually to whoever controls the stronger currency. That is why Zimbabwe matters. Not because it was extreme, because it showed the full ending. Most countries never let you see the ending that clearly. Zimbabwe did. A loaf of bread cost $1 trillion. Once a currency reaches that point, the collapse is not coming. It already happened.